Somewhere on a medical chart with your name on it, there's a single letter. A, B, AB, O, maybe a plus or minus beside it. You probably learned it once, at a blood drive, before a surgery, and then forgot it, the same way you forget your shoe size. But that letter isn't trivia. It's a working part of your immune system, active right now. And depending on which letter you carry, it nudges, measurably, what's most likely to eventually threaten your life. Not in a fortune teller way. No doctor can look at your blood type and name your exact cause of death. What it actually does is quieter. It tilts the odds slightly towards certain diseases. Clotting disorders, specific cancers, stomach infections, even how your brain ages. Small nudges, repeated over a lifetime, add up. So let's go letter by letter. What the science actually says, and what it doesn't. And along the way, it's worth asking why nobody ever sits you down and explains this properly. Part of it is practical. Blood type is one risk factor among dozens, and a 15-minute appointment doesn't have room for it.
But part of it is also that the real science here is messier than a clean headline, which is exactly why it gets oversimplified into vague online claims instead of properly explained. What a blood type actually is. Your red blood cells carry surface markers called antigens. Think of them as flags sewn onto a uniform. Type A cells fly an A flag, type B a B flag, type AB both. Type O, none. Your immune system is trained before birth to recognize your own flags as friendly and attack any flag it doesn't carry. That's why transfusions have to be matched. What most people never learn is that versions of these antigens also sit on the lining of your blood vessels and gut, which means blood type isn't just about transfusions. It's quietly tangled up in how your blood clots and how certain pathogens interact with your body. None of what follows is destiny. Diet, blood pressure, smoking, and luck still outweigh blood type for almost everyone. But the data is consistent enough across large studies that doctors no longer treat it as coincidence. Type O, the bleeder's advantage.
Type O is the most common blood type worldwide. The clearest finding here? People with type O tend to have lower levels of a clotting protein called von Willebrand factor, along with factor VIII. Less clotting tendency generally means lower risk of dangerous clots, the kind behind strokes and pulmonary embolisms. Large studies, including data cited by the American Heart Association, have found non-O blood types carry a measurably higher clot risk than type O. But that same thinner blood is a liability during trauma. If you're hemorrhaging from an injury or major surgery, type O blood doesn't slow that bleeding as efficiently. Some trauma research suggests harder bleeding control in type O patients, though the effect isn't dramatic. There's also a gut story. H. pylori, the bacterium behind most stomach ulcers and a meaningful share of stomach cancer cases worldwide, appears to bind more easily to the cells lining a type O stomach. Research out of Scandinavian institutions has linked type O to higher rates of ulcers tied to that bacterium, compared to other blood types. Nobody's entirely sure why the bacterium prefers that particular cellular doorway,
but the pattern shows up consistently enough across studies to take seriously. So if you're type O, lower clot risk, somewhat higher vulnerability to bleeding complications during trauma and to stomach infections. Not great news, not terrible news, just a different set of probabilities worth knowing, especially heading into surgery or if ulcers run in your family. Type A, the clotter's burden. Type A carries higher levels of that same von Willebrand factor and factor VIII, so the relationship flips. Long-running cohort studies, including the Nurses' Health Study, have found non-O types, A included, carry a modestly elevated coronary heart disease risk compared to O. We're talking single-digit to low double-digit percentage increases in relative risk, meaningful at a population level, not a personal death sentence. Some large studies also link type A to slightly higher rates of pancreatic and gastric cancer compared to type O, though the mechanism isn't settled. And one popular claim you'll see online, that type A blood runs higher cortisol due to some evolutionary city-dweller stress response, doesn't hold up well under scrutiny. It's a story dressed up as science. We won't repeat it as fact. Type B, the specialist. Type B is rarer globally, but concentrated in Central Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and the Middle East, a well-documented genetic pattern. Medically, it sits alongside type A on the clotting spectrum, somewhat elevated factor VIII, somewhat elevated cardiovascular risk versus type O. In some surgical cohort studies, type B has actually shown the highest relative clotting complication risk of all 4 types, though this varies study to study. Some research also links type B to slightly higher rates of certain autoimmune conditions, but this finding is inconsistent across populations. Headlines often outrun the actual science here. Type AB, the paradox. AB is the rarest type and the most recently emerged, arising where A and B populations mixed. It's the universal recipient in transfusion medicine, since AB cells carry both antigens. But carrying both antigens also means AB tends to inherit cardiovascular risk from both parent types. A widely cited Harvard analysis found AB associated with the highest coronary heart disease risk of the 4 groups in that dataset.
On dementia risk, the research is thinner than online content suggests. A few studies have linked non-O types, AB included, to higher rates of cognitive decline, but replication is limited, and other studies find no link at all. Treat this as a thread worth watching, not a settled fact. The Rh factor, a different kind of risk. Separate from the ABO system entirely, the plus or minus after your letter. Rh-negative people face essentially no extra disease risk from that alone. The real danger is specific to pregnancy. If an Rh-negative mother carries an Rh-positive baby, her immune system can build antibodies against the baby's blood type. Usually harmless for that first pregnancy, but those antibodies can endanger future Rh-positive pregnancies,
causing a serious condition called hemolytic disease of the newborn. This used to kill infants silently for generations. Today, a single medication, Rh immunoglobulin, given during and after pregnancy, blocks the antibody response almost entirely. It's one of medicine's cleanest examples of a once deadly mismatch becoming a routine line item on a prenatal chart, provided the mother has access to that care. So, what do you actually do with this? Type O, lower clot risk, slightly higher vulnerability to ulcers and bleeding complications. Types A, B, and AB, modestly higher cardiovascular risk than O, plus some less certain links to specific cancers and inflammatory conditions still being studied. Rh factor? Irrelevant to your own risk. Critical during pregnancy.
None of this should change your behavior dramatically. Manage your blood pressure, cholesterol, weight, and activity, regardless of your letter. Those factors outweigh blood type by a wide margin. What blood type gives you is context, a slightly stronger reason for cardiovascular screening if you're A, B, or AB with a family history of heart disease. A reason to mention your type before major surgery if you're O. And it's worth saying plainly, this research is mostly observational. It shows statistical association across large populations. It doesn't mean your blood type controls your fate. Lifestyle, the rest of your genome, and plain chance sit on top of it and usually outweigh it. 2 people with the exact same blood type can live wildly different lengths of life, shaped by everything else going on around that one letter. Your blood type was written by which ancestors survived which plagues, which populations migrated through which environments, which groups eventually mixed with which others. It's a real biological inheritance, but it's a paragraph in a much longer book. Not the whole story, and definitely not the ending. Next time you see that letter on a medical form, you don't need to fear it. You just don't need to ignore it either. It's not your fate. It's a fact. And unlike fate, facts are things you can actually do something about.